Peace, be still. Peace, be still. Or how loud do we think Jesus said that? Have you been out in a boat in a storm? It's so loud you can't hear anyone else on the boat unless they're screaming to you. If you find yourself accidentally on a boat in a storm, even just wild and rough water, let alone a storm. One of my cousins has decided in retirement that he needed to buy a boat and that he and his wife are going to get on it and sail around the world. And they haven't been known as sailors, so, we're all praying that they make it back. I'm sure they're going to have great stories to tell us. And as a minister's kid, he'll know to keep in mind a few biblical references while he's out there. And I'm pretty sure that he's going to remember this one more than one time while he's out there. Now, he's a smart guy, so he's probably doing a lot of preparing. But nonetheless, I think we're all going to be fairly hopeful and prayerful that they don't run into many storms like the disciples found themselves in on this day. The writings about this gospel are vast. It's a story that's told across the Gospels in different ways. Mark is usually the most direct, and he's the least gentle in his use of language. He's very clear that Jesus is wondering why the disciples would question their safety in the storm while Jesus is sleeping in the boat. Personally, even from a very young age, I thought, of course they're questioning it because they're about to get tossed into the sea and Jesus doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. I think there's been times in all of our lives where we have thought to ourselves, God, what is going on? Where are you? And sometimes it begins as a quiet prayer and it escalates as our anxiety escalates and our worry escalates and our desperate cry continues. And I always find it interesting, the balance or the contrast, however you want to think it, between a prayer and cry of desperation that's considered a lack of faith and a cry and prayer of desperation that's considered absolute faith. God, where are you? Can be a very faithful prayer. God, where are you? Can be also a prayer that says, restore my faith. I'm having a hard time understanding how you sleeping in this storm is also you being here for me. It's very rare that I look from the disciples' perspective and think that they're not very smart or that they're fools. I'm sure that you can identify with that as well. I often think, I don't think I'd have had the right answer in that situation. I don't think I would have been any more brave than them. In fact, I wouldn't have been as brave as they were. But what is happening when Jesus is sleeping in this boat? When he says what he does to the disciples, and then when he tells the storm and the seas to be quiet. Starting from the most large perspective, this is an identification as Jesus in command of the world that's beyond our comprehension. This is an apocalyptic revelation. This is where we see Jesus letting us know that the world that he commands is beyond this world, easily commands things beyond us. It's like when Jesus sends the demon out of someone. It's the same language, in fact, the same words when he says, be still. So this is a first type of revelation to the disciples where they're seeing Jesus interacting with something way beyond them. And it's an important thing for us to remember. I find it encouraging to remember that there is something that's much larger than us. We don't have control over it, and we don't have to. Our job is to believe that God, our God, is the one who rules over all of that. But then there's the piece where Jesus is addressing the disciples, and he's saying, your faith in me being in this boat needs to be strong. I am here. I am with you, even if you think I've gone asleep. A very personal story to this congregation just kept coming to my mind while I was reading this gospel, and I'm going to share it with you, and I think you'll probably identify with it. When we were choosing our prayers in Thy Kingdom Come, you may recall from the day of Ascension on to Pentecost, we chose 5 people to pray for. And I usually begin that process by praying about who the 5 people should be, because I don't always know who needs me praying for them, but I trust God to let me know. And as I was praying about that, the odd name seemed obvious, and maybe that was my own choice coming forward. And then one of those names that came to me as clear as could be was Leanna, Sandra's daughter. And I know Leanna, a baptized Hunter, her 4th little guy. And of course, we've had some wonderful conversations. We don't see each other a lot because Leanna has 4 children and they both work full time. And I think we all understand how hard that can be to manage. But Leanna's name was 100% meant to be on my list, and I just said, okay, that's what you do. So I prayed for Leanna all those days. And our prayer in Ascension is that God will come into someone's life and act in it. And for some people, they may not know God at all. And for a number of people that came to me this year, it was people who do have God in their life, but maybe God needed to act in a certain way that would be important for them. I don't question it, I just pray. It's kind of incredible that very shortly later, Leanna's little boy was fighting for his life. And Leanna's prayer life became fundamental to every moment of her day. And her mom and her dad and her husband and her family and Maggie and I were there together. Jesus was in the boat. It doesn't mean the storm's not coming, but he's there. Then we all prayed. And thank God. Peace. The waters were stilled. Amen.